The Big Thirst. The Secret Life and Turbulent Future of Water. By Charles Fishman. Narrated by Stephen Hoye. Copyright 2011 by Charles Fishman. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Charles Fishman and the Saghalin Literary Agency, and was produced in the year 2011 by Tantor Media, Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. 1. The Revenge of Water. Water is H2O, hydrogen 2 parts, oxygen 1. But there is also a third thing that makes it water, and nobody knows what it is. D.H. Lawrence. The Third Thing. At T-minus 16 seconds in the launch sequence of NASA's space shuttle, the launch control computers would trigger the release of water from a 290-foot-high water tank that stands next to the launch pad at Florida's Kennedy Space Center. The 2 pipes that delivered the water to the pad are each 7 feet in diameter. Just before the shuttle's rocket motors ignited, 300,000 gallons of water would cascade across the base of the pad, eventually flowing at a rate of nearly 1 million gallons a minute. As the shuttle roared off the pad, the blast from its 5 engines poured down into the 2.5 million-pound cushion of water. The water was flowing so furiously, it ran out 9 seconds into liftoff. The water actually had nothing to do with damping the heat or fire from the shuttle's motors. It was a sound suppressant. The space shuttle's rockets were so loud that without the sound-absorbing cushion of water, the roar from the engines would bounce off the metal and concrete base of the pad and ricochet back up. The sound waves would have torn the spacecraft apart before it was clear of the launch tower. We use water to baptize our children, and we use it to launch the most advanced spacecraft ever created. Water creates both the hypnotic majesty of Niagara Falls and the miniature untouchable filigree of each snowflake. Solid water tore open the steel hull of the Titanic. Liquid water sank her. You need great water to brew great coffee. You need great water to make great beer. You need pretty darn good water to make good concrete. Water adds the fun to water balloons, to a slip and slide, to a shower for 2. Water is both mythic and real. It manages to be at once part of the mystery of life and part of the routine of life. We can use water to wash our dishes and our dogs and our cars without giving it a second thought, but few of us can resist simply standing and watching breakers crash on the beach. Water has all kinds of associations and connections, implications and suggestiveness. It also has an indispensable practicality. Water is the most familiar substance in our lives. It is also unquestionably the most important substance in our lives. Water vapor is the insulation in our atmosphere that makes Earth a comfortable place for us to live. Water drives our weather and shapes our geography. Water is the lubricant that allows the continents themselves to move. Water is the secret ingredient of our fuel-hungry society. The electricity you use at home each day requires 250 gallons of water per person. Not just more than the actual water you use at home in the kitchen and the bathroom, but 2.5 times more. That new flat-screen TV, it turns out, needs not just a wall outlet and a cable connection, but also its own water supply to get going. Who would have guessed? Water is also the secret ingredient in the computer chips that make possible everything from MRI machines to Twitter accounts. Indeed, from blue jeans to iPhones, from Kleenex to basmati rice, to the steel in your Toyota Prius, every product of modern life is awash in water. The 2-liter bottle of Coke in your refrigerator required 5 liters of water to produce. Water is how we amuse ourselves. In the pool, at the beach, in a sauna, or on a sailboat. Water is a source of excitement on a whitewater rafting trip, and an instinctive source of comfort in a steaming shower at the end of a long day. Water is, quite literally, everywhere. When you take a carton of milk from the refrigerator and set it on the table, within a minute or two the outside is covered in a film of condensation. water that has migrated almost instantly from the air of the kitchen to the cold surface of the milk carton. Water infuses our language the way it does the air around us. The water references so common we don't even notice them. Go with the flow, blow off steam, wet behind the ears. The mortgage crisis that triggered the Great Recession was caused in part by all those homes that ended up underwater. And of course, water is the most important substance in our lives, because we ourselves are made mostly of water. Men are typically 60% water. Women are typically 55% water. A 150-pound man is 90 pounds of water. 11 gallons. Note: women have less water on average because fat contains almost no water, and women in general have a higher percentage of body fat than men. Water weighs 8.33 pounds per gallon. Everything human beings do is quite literally a function of water, because every cell in our bodies is plumped full of it, and every cell is bathed in watery fluid. Blood is 83% water. Every heartbeat is mediated by chemicals in water. When we gaze at a starry night sky, the cells in our eyes execute all their seeing functions in water. Thinking about water requires neurons filled with water. Given that water is both the most familiar substance in our lives and the most important substance in our lives, the really astonishing thing is that most of us don't think of ourselves as having a relationship to water. It's perfectly natural to talk about our relationship to our car, or our relationship to food, our relationship to alcohol or money or to God. But water has achieved an invisibility in our lives that is only more remarkable given how central it is. Water used to be part of the rhythm and motivation of daily life, and there are plenty of places, including farms and whole swaths of the developing world, where it still is. But in the United States and the developed world, we've spent the last 100 years in a kind of aquatic paradise. Our water has been abundant, safe, and cheap. The 20th century was really the first time when all three of those things were true. It has created a kind of golden age of water, when we could use as much as we wanted, whenever we wanted, for almost no cost. Water service is so reliable that it has become completely inconspicuous. It is possible for a typical American to go a whole lifetime and never turn on the kitchen faucet and have no water come out. Indeed, water faucets that don't work are so rare they're a little spooky. We don't even have an expression for the water equivalent of a power failure, whereas power failures are common enough that our microwave ovens are programmed to display PF when the electricity has gone out. We live very wet lives, but we have no idea just how wet. The effortless way we have come to manage water is a testament to both water's moment-to-moment utility and to our own ingenuity. But unlike the time we spend at the gas pump, where we can see the gallons as they are pumped and the instant impact on our credit card bill, the way we handle water use insulates us not just from the wonders of water, but from any sense of how much water daily life requires, or the work and expense required to deliver that water. The good news is that most of what we know about water isn't really wrong, because we don't know that much. The bad news is that the invisibility of water in our lives isn't good for us, and it isn't good for water. You can't appreciate what you don't understand. You don't value and protect what you don't know is there. Back in 1999, a team of researchers recorded 289,000 toilet flushes of Americans in 12 cities, from Seattle to Tampa. In fact, the researchers used electronic water flow sensors to record not just toilet flushes, but every water event in each of 1,188 homes for 4 weeks. Although the study cost less than $1 million, it is considered so detailed and so pioneering that it hasn't been duplicated in the decades since. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency continues to cite it as the definitive look at how Americans use water at home. The researchers measured everything we do with water at home: how many gallons a bath takes, how often the clothes washer runs, how much water the dishwasher uses, who has low-flow shower heads and who has regular, how many times we flush the toilet each day, and how many gallons of water each flush uses. The study's overall conclusion can be summed up in 4 words. We like to flush. For Americans, flushing the toilet is the main way we use water. We use more water flushing toilets than bathing or cooking or washing our hands, our dishes, or our clothes. The typical American flushes the toilet 5 times a day at home and uses 18.5 gallons, 70 liters of water just for that. What that means is that every day, as a nation, just to flush our toilets, Americans use 5,700,000,000 gallons of water. 5.7 billion gallons of clean drinking water down the toilet. And that's just at home. It's impossible to get your brain around that number, of course. 5.7 billion gallons of water a day. But here's a way of thinking about it. It's more water than all the homes in the United Kingdom and Canada use each day for all their needs. We flush more water down the toilet than 95 million Brits and Canadians use. Of course, we are a big country, and we do need to flush our toilets. Or at least, we like to. When we think about the big ways we use water, flushing the toilet doesn't typically leap to mind. It's one of those unnoticed parts of our daily water use, our daily water mark, that turn out to be both startling and significant. The largest single consumer of water in the United States, in fact, is virtually invisible. Every day, the nation's power plants use 201 billion gallons of water in the course of generating electricity. That isn't water used by hydroelectric plants. It's the water used by coal, gas, and nuclear power plants for cooling and to make steam. U.S. electric utilities require 7 times more water than all U.S. homes. They use 1.5 times the amount of water used by all the farms in the country. In fact, 49% of all water use in the United States is for power plants. Toilets and electric outlets may be stealthy consumers of water, but they at least serve vital functions. One of the largest daily consumers of water isn't a use at all. 1 of every 6 gallons of water pumped into water mains by U.S. utilities simply leaks away back into the ground. 16% of the water disappears from the pipes before it makes it to a home or business or factory. Every 6 days, U.S. water utilities lose an entire day's water, and that 16% U.S. loss rate isn't too bad. British utilities lose 19% of the water they pump. The French lose 26%. There is perhaps no better symbol of the golden age of water, of the carefree, almost cavalier attitude that our abundance has fostered. We go to the trouble and expense to find city-size quantities of water, build dams, reservoirs, and tanks to store it, and plants to treat it. Then we pump it out to customers only to let it dribble away before anyone can use it. One of the hallmarks of the 20th century, at least in the developed world, is that we have gradually been able to stop thinking about water. We use more of it than ever, we rely on it for purposes we not only never see but can hardly imagine, and we think about it not at all. It is a striking achievement. We used to build monuments, even temples, to water. The aqueducts of the Roman Empire are marvels of engineering and soaringly elegant design. They were plumbing presented as civic achievement, and as a tribute to the water itself. Today, water has drifted so far from civic celebration that many people visit the Roman aqueducts without any sense at all that they moved water, or how. In Poland Spring, Maine, there is an actual marble and granite temple enclosing the burbling spring that gives one of the nation's most popular bottled waters its name. The temple was built in 1906 to celebrate a source of water that was then so pure and so highly regarded that people as far away as Boston, New York, and Chicago could arrange to have it delivered for household use. Many cities in the world are located where they are because of their proximity to water. For most of human history, in most settings, getting water was part of the daily routine. It was a constant part of our mental landscape. At the same time, humanity's relationship to its water supply was wary, because water often made people sick. That's why Poland spring water was so popular in Boston and New York a century ago. It was safe. 100 years ago, with the dawn of bacteriology, two things happened. Cities started aggressively separating their freshwater supplies from their sewage disposal, something they had been surprisingly slow to do. Philadelphia is just one of many cities whose sewage system 100 years ago emptied into a river upstream of the city water supply intakes from the same river. And water utilities discovered that basic sand filters and chlorination could clean and disinfect water supplies, all but assuring their safety. In the decade from 1905 to 1915, as dozens of water systems around the country installed filters and chlorination systems, we went through a water revolution that profoundly improved human life forever. Between 1900 and 1940, mortality rates in the United States fell 40%. How much did clean water matter? Harvard economist David Cutler and Stanford professor of medicine Grant Miller conducted a remarkable analysis published in 2005, teasing out the impact of the new water treatment methods on the most dramatic reduction in death rates in U.S. history. By 1936, they conclude, simple filtration and chlorination of city water supplies reduced overall mortality in U.S. cities by 13%. Clean water cut child mortality in half. From 1900 to 1940, U.S. life expectancy at birth went from 47 years to 63 years. In just 40 years, the lifespan of the average American was extended 16 years. A child born in 1900 could expect to live only until 1947, not even to mid-century. A child born in 1940 quite likely lived to hear the news in 2003 that the human genome had been completely mapped. Clean municipal water encouraged cities to grow, and it also encouraged the expansion of mains water during the 20th century as the way most Americans got their water. By 2005, only 14% of Americans still relied on wells or some other self-supplied water. That first water revolution ushered in an era, the one we think we still live in which water was unlimited, free, and safe. And once it was unlimited, free, and safe, we could stop thinking about it. The fact that it was unfailingly available on demand meant that we would use it more, even as we thought about it less. The figures are dramatic. In 1955, the U.S. Geological Survey's water use analysis said that rural Americans without running water in their homes used 10 gallons a day per person. That same year, each cow used 20 gallons per day. For newly electrified farm families with pumps, and for city families, that number was already 60 gallons per person. Today, it's 100 gallons per person at home, and to say that we take water for granted is in some ways to give us too much credit. We don't take water for granted because we don't notice it enough to take it for granted. It's like gravity, except that in some ways water is actually more important than gravity. We do, in fact, have people living round the clock without gravity, and have for a decade in the International Space Station. Most people have no idea where the water they brush their teeth with comes from, or how it gets to them. The pipes are hidden. The sources of the water put into those pipes are remote. Our home water bills, which are less than half our monthly cable TV or cell phone bills, provide almost no insight into how much water we use or how we use it, even if we study them. The pricing of water has a kind of invisibility, or opaqueness at least, all its own. 10 gallons of tap water at home cost on average 3 pennies. That's the equivalent of getting 74 of those $1.29 half-liter bottles of water we love so much for less than a nickel. We happily pay 3,000 times that price at the convenience store, one bottle for $1.29. But when the water bill goes from $30 to $34 a month, customers react as if they'll have to choose between their prescription drugs and their water service. We gladly pay perfectly silly prices for productized water because of the aura that's been created around it. But we have so little appreciation of the effort required to get water into our homes that any price increase inspires outrage. The way water infuses the products we use every day and the volumes those products require is invisible to us. The ownership and control of water is invisible. In some places, for instance, you don't actually own the water that falls on your roof or in your yard. If someone has rights to the rivershed runoff, he owns it. The problems of water are, for the moment, mostly invisible. When we're done with the water we use every day, it simply disappears. What becomes of it is invisible to us. The new class of micropollutants we are beginning to hear about, infinitesimal, almost molecular traces of plastics, birth control pills, antidepressants, have literally been invisible even to chemists until very recently. You certainly can't tell if they're in your water by looking at it or drinking it. The impact of those micropollutants on our health, if any, may remain invisible for years, and may be almost impossible to predict or trace. Even our emotional connections to water have become submerged and camouflaged. The ease with which water enters and leaves our lives allows us an indifference to our water supply. We are utterly ignorant of our own watermark, of the amount of water required to float us through the day, and we are utterly indifferent to the mark our daily life leaves on the water supply. Our very success with water has allowed us to become water illiterate. But the golden age of water is rapidly coming to an end. The last century has conditioned us to think that water is naturally abundant, safe, and cheap, that it should be, that it will be. We're in for a rude shock. We are in the middle of a water crisis already, in the United States and around the world. The experts realize it. The Weather Channel already has a dedicated burning orange logo for its drought reports, but even in areas with serious water problems, most people don't seem to understand. We are entering a new era of water scarcity, not just in traditionally dry or hard-pressed places like the U.S. Southwest and the Middle East, but in places we think of as water-wealthy, like Atlanta and Melbourne. The three things that we have taken to be the natural state of our water supply, abundant, cheap, and safe, will not be present together in the decades ahead. We may have water that is abundant and cheap, but it will be reuse water, for things like lawn watering or car washing, not for drinking. We will certainly have drinking water that is safe, and it may be abundant, but it will not be thoughtlessly inexpensive. We are on the verge of a second modern water revolution, and it is likely to change our attitudes at least as much as the one 100 years ago. The new water scarcity will reshape how we live, how we work, how we relax. It will reshape how we value water and how we understand it. We have ignored water, neglected our water supplies and our water systems, taken for granted the economic value of abundant water, and become blasé about the day-to-day convenience of easy water. We may well go directly from the golden age of water to the revenge of water. In the spring of 2008, the water situation in Barcelona, Spain, had become quite desperate. A drought across Catalonia had extended to 18 months and become the worst in 60 years. Barcelona, Catalonia's capital, is a metro area with a population of 5 million, famous for its beaches, its wide boulevards, its Seussian architecture, its fountains, and its food. The city was looking at reservoirs that were 80% empty, and had ordered the fountains and the beachside showers turned off. The government negotiated the rights to water from a nearby river, and had begun work on a 37-mile emergency water pipeline down the center of a main highway that would deliver the water at a cost of $280 million. A new desalination plant was also under construction, big enough to supply a quarter of the city's needs, but it was a year from being finished. And so the nervous leaders of Barcelona's water company did something unprecedented. They decided to bring in water by ship from the Spanish city of Tarragona, down the coast from Barcelona, and from the French city of Marseille, up the coast. It was an effort that was simultaneously heroic and silly. The first ship to tie up at Barcelona's docks was the nondescript red freighter Sichem Defender, which arrived from Tarragona. Barcelona's port had been specially adapted to accommodate the water-bearing ships at a cost of $32 million, and the water flowed straight from the freighter's tanks into Barcelona's water mains. A couple days later, a second ship arrived, the Contesta Defender, from Marseille. Barcelona was scheduled to receive several shiploads of water a week throughout the summer, at a cost to the city of $30 million. The first two ships hauled in what seemed to be miniature reservoirs. It was a water version of the Berlin airlift. Just keep the tankers coming. The Sichem Defender put 5 million gallons of water into Barcelona's municipal system, and its sister ship brought in 9.5 million gallons. But given Barcelona's scale, the first ship's water lasted 32 minutes. The larger ship provided 62 minutes of water. In fact, even supertankers don't carry city-sized quantities of water. And not everyone was supportive. Miguel Ángel Fraile, Secretary-General of the Catalan Federation of Commerce, said, "The arrival of a boat full of water is the image of the absolute failure of government administration which neither Barcelona nor Catalonia deserves. You can understand a boat bringing water to an island, but not to a continent." The water-bearing ships were a symbolic gesture, an expensive one, but it's not quite clear what the symbolism was. Perhaps we're doing everything we can to make sure Barcelona has water, or wake up. Even if we had 2 of these ships coming a day every day, Barcelona could still end up thirsty. As Barcelona's drought problems were becoming acute, a small city in Tennessee completely succumbed to the drought that was then in its 7th year across the southeastern United States. The city of Orme, Tennessee, is located 40 miles into the hills west of Chattanooga, a hamlet just 2 miles from Alabama, right where Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia come together. Once a flourishing mining town, Orme has for 100 years gotten its municipal water from Spout Springs, a mountain stream that ends in a dramatic 200-foot cascade at the base of Orme Mountain. The drought slowly dried out the whole area. 60% of the streams in Tennessee were at historic low flows, and Orme was just 150 miles northwest of Atlanta, which was itself the epicenter of a water crisis much like Barcelona's. On August 1, 2007, Orme's spring dried up, and Orme's 17,500-gallon water tank quickly dried up as well. Orme was out of water. The then-mayor, Tony Reams, organized his own version of Barcelona's virtual water main. Volunteer firefighters drove the town's 1961 fire truck down the road 2.5 miles to Bridgeport, Alabama, tanked up the fire truck's 1,500-gallon capacity from a fire hydrant there, then drove back to pump the water into Orme's water tank. Sometimes the firefighters got help from a second truck loaned by another nearby city. Bridgeport, which gets its water from the robust Tennessee River running along its eastern side, didn't charge Orme for filling its fire truck. Every few days the fire truck would make 10 round trips to Bridgeport's fire hydrant to fill up the town's water tank, and every night at 6 p.m. for months Mayor Reams would go to the tank and open a valve that turned on water service to the town. Orme residents got 3 hours of water each night. 3 hours to shower, do the laundry, cook, and fill whatever containers of water they needed for getting ready for work and school the next morning. Mayor Reams turned the supply valve off every night at 9 p.m., and the town's taps and toilets went dry for another 21 hours. Orme is tiny, 40 families, 142 people, and remote. Cell phones have no reception in the valley where the town sits. Still, on a typical day before the drought, the town would empty its water tank and refill it from Spout Springs. Oddly, although the town that ran dry in the drought briefly became one of those novelty stories that the national news networks like CNN and Fox News love, no one came to the rescue of Orme. It is almost unheard of for a U.S. town of any size or scale to simply run out of water. It's equally exotic for the residents of a U.S. town to be limited to 3 hours of water a day. 24-hour-a-day water is the unquestioned standard. On Thanksgiving, 3 months after the spring ran dry, Orm was still on the 3-hour-a-day ration.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?